Shri Harim Paramanandam Upadeshtaramishwaram Vyapakam Sarvalokanam Karanam Tam Namamyaham. I bow down to him, to Shri Hari, the supreme bliss, the first teacher, Ishvara, the all-pervading one and the cause of all the worlds. So from yesterday's class, we had some questions. I will not actually reply to all of the questions. We'll just take up a couple for discussion. Yes. So Anjana is asking if I feel like I am in the flow with an activity geared only for self-improvement, does that action count as meditation? Thank you, Anjana. It counts as focus, it counts as concentration, it counts as good training of the mind. But remember, the meditation that we are talking about, whether yogic meditation or Advaitic meditation, has a specific goal of enlightenment, God realization. Yogic meditation achieves that through the calming and cessation of the movements of the mind, chitta vritti nirodha. The Advaitic meditation, nididhyasana, which we are discussing, there you already possess knowledge and clarity. It is to assimilate that knowledge. It is to specific purpose. The technical word used is to overcome the obstacle called viparita bhavana. Viparita bhavana means contrary tendencies. So we have certain tendencies of behaving as body-mind. And those things and those patterns of behavior are overcome when you soak yourself in, assimilate, marinate yourself in the knowledge, the clarity which you already have gained through Shravana and Manana. So that's the specific purpose of Advaitic meditation. So if you just have, if you're just focused on some activity, maybe a game of tennis, or you're performing surgery or something like that, if you're deeply focused in that, that's concentration, that's focus, and that's very good. In fact, that's also good for you psychologically. They call these flow activities or flow experiences. And that has an integrative effect on the psychology. You feel richer, more integrated, better after these flow experiences. But that's just still focus of mind. Good training, but in itself not spiritual. Then one more question I will take up. This is from Janhavi. Pranam Swamiji, in the context of yoga, when one comes back to the bodily senses after experiencing the samadhi state during meditation, does the realization of Brahman continue even in the waking state, or does it merely form a memory? For the sadhaka to realize and experience Brahman even in the waking state is vichara, Vedantic inquiry, the only sadhana. That is Janhavi. It's a good question. Now, experiences, particular experiences. By particular experiences, I mean an experience which is different from the other experiences and which has a beginning and an end. So all experiences, all particular experiences, it could be a worldly experience, like having a cup of tea, or like listening to a little bit of music. That's a particular experience. All these experiences have beginning and end. And after the experiences are over, they leave a memory. Similarly, for spiritual experiences, there are mystical experiences which are possible. So in yogic samadhi, in the deepest absorption through yoga, certain mystical experiences are possible and almost inevitable. You will get it. Visions of light, hearing sounds, then finally visions of deities, of divine forms. Those things will come. But those are also particular experiences. So they have a beginning and they have an end. And they will leave a trace, a very powerful trace. And it's not that they are not valuable, they're very valuable. In fact, mystical experiences, experiences of the forms of gods and goddesses, of the Jyoti. So these experiences have a transformative effect. They are very valuable in our spiritual life, but they also have a beginning and an end. And they will leave a memory, a very valued memory. Probably you will never ever forget such experiences for the rest of your life. In fact, spiritual dreams which are very profound and spiritually very moving, transformative, those dreams also one cannot forget for the rest of one's life. That is so, and many people have such experiences. In meditation, in samadhi, if one gets an experience, very good. That's a very powerful transformative effect. But as against particular experiences, whether worldly or spiritual, there is knowledge. So the knowledge that I am, for example, I have the knowledge I am Sarvapriyananda. It's not actually a memory. It's I know that I am that. It's not that I experienced that I was Sarvapriyananda at one time, and after that I have a memory of being Sarvapriyananda, which I'm recalling. No. I just feel, if you call me, if you ask my name, I will say Sarvapriyananda. That is knowledge, jnana, and that does not depend on particular experiences. That will always be there. So similarly, the realization that I am Brahman is knowledge. It's not a particular experience. When is this realization that I am Brahman? All the time. In which experience do I get the knowledge that I am Brahman? In all experiences. Just like in all the experiences, I know myself as Sarvapriyananda. If I'm seeing, I am Sarvapriyananda. If I'm eating, I am Sarvapriyananda. If I'm talking, I am Sarvapriyananda. This knowledge is constant. So similarly, the Brahma Jnana, the realization that I am Brahman, is constant. It's not a constant experience. Knowledge, it is knowledge. No experience, no particular experience can be constant. It has to come and go. Even the greatest of mystical experiences has to come and go. Now, this knowledge that I am Brahman, can it come in samadhi, or is Atma Vichara the only path? Now, in yogic samadhi, in Patanjali Yoga, the goal is actually a form of knowledge. This is called Viveka Khyati. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, this is discussed. Ultimately, the goal in Patanjali Yoga is to realize I am consciousness, I am not matter. I am not the body, I'm not even mind. I am the witness consciousness of body, mind. I'm separate from the material universe. This Viveka, this separation, it is manifest, Viveka Khyati. This knowledge comes from samadhi. I mean, after samadhi, one realizes that what I experienced in samadhi was when the mind was silent, there was no experience of the world, there was no experience of the body, there was no experience of the personality, and yet I was there shining as consciousness. So I am Purusha, consciousness, separate from Prakriti. This knowledge will come. Now, the samadhi will come and go, but the knowledge will remain. And that is Patanjali Yoga. In Advaita Vedanta, the sadhana is Atma Vichara. So when we are talking about Advaita Vedanta, it is an inquiry into ourselves. Into ourselves means into our experience of ourselves. What experience of ourselves? Whatever is available, subject and object, the Panchakosha, the 5 levels of the human personality, the 3 states we all experience, waking, dreaming, deep sleep. How to do this inquiry? What is the method? The method is taught in the Mandukya, it is taught in Aparokshanubhuti. Remember, we are starting from 100th verse. Before that, 100 verses are over. So the methods have been taught. It is taught in Drigdrishya Viveka, it's taught in the Upanishads. So these methods called prakriyas are methods of inquiry, and they reveal to us the knowledge that I am the unchanging, ever available, effortlessly available, ever free, pure consciousness. Existence, consciousness, bliss, I am that. That knowledge becomes clear. Now, in order to assimilate that knowledge so that it becomes natural, it becomes effortless, it becomes sahaja. The Sanskrit word is sahaja. We do this Vedantic meditation, nididhyasana, to overcome the as I said, viparita bhavana, the contrary tendencies of continuing to behave as body mind, continuing to behave as a little person because of past conditioning, that continuing, the tendency will be there. To overcome that, we stay with the new understanding. We assimilate this new knowledge. And that is the role of Advaitic meditation, Nididhyasana. All right. Let us continue. The three techniques we saw earlier, yama, niyama, tyagaha. Yama, the 5 great practices mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, satya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, asteya, aparigraha, truth, non-violence, sense control, and then non-acceptance of gifts, that's non-accumulation, non-stealing. All of that, Shankaracharya says, he gives us an insight that from an Advaitic perspective, see that everything that you experience in this world is none other than Brahman, is you, the consciousness. So automatically there will be no tendency to go out in temptation, in desire. I am that. What do I want from outside? There is no outside for me. Everything that I see is just like a dream. Everything in my dream is actually my own mind. Who will become greedy about something that you have seen in a dream? I was eating a pizza. Why did you wake me up? I have to go back. The pizza is still remaining in the dream. No, the pizza is gone. Now also will you be upset that somebody wakes you up, because that was not there anyway. It was not there outside your mind anyway. Similarly, there is nothing here in this universe outside this awareness which I am. Why will anything tempt me? Why will anything scare me also? Then the next one was the niyama, the 5 disciplines. Shaucha, purity, physical and mental purity, and then santosha, contentment, and then there is swadhyaya, study of the scriptures, then tapaha, austerities, then there is this Ishvara pranidhana, worship and surrender to God. All of that, Shankaracharya gives a non-dual insight. And the insight he gives is that sajatiya vritti pravahasya vijatiya tiraskritihi. What is the practice here? Instead of those individually struggling with those disciplines, just hold on to this knowledge you have gained, that I am Brahman. Not a mantra. Remember, I mentioned yesterday the difference between knowledge and repeating a mantra. So it's not a mantra. Stay with the knowledge that I am Brahman, and deliberately the non-Advaitic vrittis, which tell me I am body, which tell me that I should react as a person, deliberately set them aside. Sajatiya pravaha vijatiya tiraskriti. Sajatiya means of the same kind. I am Brahman. It need not be a mantra repetition of I am Brahman, I am Brahman. Don't do that. It could be I am unattached, asangoaham. I am awareness, chidana, and the nature of bliss, chidanandaham. It could be swaprakashaham. I am luminous. I'm in my light. The mind and the sense organs are working and revealing all the world to me. So any one of them, they will do. It's the same knowledge. You're just staying with it. And the third insight was renunciation. So instead of renouncing objects, relationships, money, possessions, instead of that, Shankaracharya gives another insight into Advaita Vedanta. Everything is this one consciousness which I am, just like the princess of Kashi. So the prince who realized that the princess of Kashi is none other than I myself in that form. It was painted. So my childhood picture was painted in that form. I was wearing the dress of the princess of Kashi. There's no princess of Kashi apart from me. Once he realizes that, what happened to the desire of the prince for the princess of Kashi? It went away. How did it go away? Why did the prince of Kashi lose the desire to marry the princess of Kashi? And why did the prince, not the prince of Kashi, that prince who had the desire to marry the princess of Kashi, why did he lose the desire? Was it because the princess of Kashi is dead? Is it because that the princess of Kashi has been married to somebody else? No, it is because the princess of Kashi is none other than himself. So what he wanted is always attained. He is always himself, effortlessly so. There is no other desirable princess of Kashi apart from himself, and so he is fulfilled. In the same way, there is the renunciation of the universe is a realization that I am this universe, or this universe is nothing different from me, the one consciousness. How do you renounce all the wonderful things in a dream? You realize it's a dream. You see wonderful things in a movie. How do you renounce all those wonderful things in a movie? There is no need to renounce. It is all automatically renounced by the very fact that it's a movie. There is no particular desire that when I go home from the movie hall, there are some nice dresses and nice shoes and nice gadgets which I saw in the department store in that movie. Those things I will take with myself. No, they are not there at all. You have no greed for that. There's some nice food which was shown in the movie. That food I want to eat there in the one which was shown in the movie. That one only I want to eat. You cannot, because it doesn't exist at all. So by realization, you see, there are two sides to it. One side is it's an appearance like a dream. No need to be greedy about it, tempted by it. It's there's no need to be scared of it also, because it's an appearance. The other side of it is nothing other than I. There is nothing that it will add to me, because I am appearing in that form. So this is renunciation of the universe. In fact, this is the meaning of the Isha Upanishad, the first mantra of the Isha Upanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. When you realize, it says you cover the universe. Whatever is in the universe, moving and unmoving, you cover it by God. Cover it by God means you, Shankaracharya gives his commentary, Bhashya there. Covering by God means uncovering God. God is already there. Brahman, Isha is already there in this universe, that one consciousness. You have to uncover it. Uncovering means what? Discover it. You have to discover. So cover everything by the Lord. Isha vasyam idam sarvam. That's the meaning. Shankaracharya interprets that cover everything by Brahman or by God means uncover the God which already exists in everything. Uncover means discover the God which already exists in everything. How do you discover? Through inquiry only. Atma Vichar, you have to discover it in yourself first. Then, next practice, silence. So next practice is, of that the yogis practice is silence. 107. There are 3 verses on silence. So recommending silence is speaking a lot, Shankaracharya here. 3 verses. Let me read them all out and then we will talk about it. Yasmad vacho nivattante aprapya manasa saha yanmaunam yogi bhir gamyam tad bhavet sarvada buddha. The wise should always be one with that silence, wherefrom words together with the mind turns back without reaching it, but which is attainable by the yogins. Then 108 and 9 together. Vacho yasmad nivattante tadvaktum kena shakyate prapancho yadi vaktavya sopi shabda vivarjitaha iti va tadbhavet maunam satam sahaja sangitam gira maunam tu balanam prayuktam brahmavadibhi. Who can describe that Brahman whence words turn away? So silence is inevitable while describing Brahman. Or if the phenomenal world were to be described, even that is beyond words. This, to give an alternate definition, may also be termed silence, known among the sages as congenital. The observance of silence by restraining speech, on the other hand, is ordained by the teachers of Brahman for the ignorant. So, first of all, the basic practice which yogis practice is the silence of speech. A lot of energy is wasted by speaking. So we talk a lot unnecessarily, and often what we talk gets us into trouble. One Swami is still there, elderly Swami. He was the head of a very big ashram. He would hardly speak with the visitors, with the devotees, with the monks, hardly, just a few, one or two words. So one day somebody asked him, Swami, why don't you speak? There's so many people who want to talk to you, want to listen to you. Why don't you speak? So he had a little bit of dry humor. He said, well, now the only complaint against me is that I don't speak. That's all. Which means if I speak, there will be many more complaints against me. Right now, there's only one complaint you can say. He doesn't speak. So often what we say gets us into a lot of trouble. And also when we say practicing truth, talking a lot, there's always every chance that we will deviate from the truth. So the recommendation is Satyam cha hitam cha mitam cha. This is the recommendation about speech. Satyam cha hitam cha mitam cha. Satyam means truth. Speak the truth. Do not deliberately tell untruths. But that also not all truths. Hitam cha, which is beneficial, which is of some use, which will do good to people. That which is beneficial, speak that truth. Hitam. And also another rule is mitam. Mitam means limited. Let your speech be limited. Let the words you speak be few. Much better to listen, much better to remain quiet rather than speak a lot. Now, one of the practices that yogis undertake is actually deliberately, consciously stopping speech. So it could be a vow of silence, maunam. Maunam is a vow of silence. Gandhiji, for example, once a week, he would remain quiet throughout the day. Though when he was very busy, if people wanted his advice or his response on things, he would scribble a note sometimes. I know that Swami Ranganathanandaji, who was the 13th president of our order, is very great teacher, orator. He also would remain silent on a particular day of the week. And not only that, at one time when he was touring the world, he was known as a world preacher of Vedanta. Every year he would retire, sometimes to Haridwar, Kankhal, and stay for a month without giving any speeches, without talking at all, just remaining quiet. So that is a vow of silence, and it's a very good practice. Now, it can be overdone. I knew a monk, sometimes monks do that, these practices of the vow of silence. So I knew a monk who observed this vow of silence for a few years. And but it can be overdone. Once I was there in the same room, and this other monk was also there in that same room one night, and of course he wouldn't speak. So whatever you say, he would respond with gestures. Now at night he started speaking. When he fell asleep, he started speaking and spoke throughout the night. And so in the morning I woke up and I told him, Maharaj, you are speaking in the night. And he wouldn't believe it. He, in the gestures, he's looking at me and saying, like, who, me? No. That means, who, me? It can't be. It's not true. And other monks also would make fun, like they're sometimes like mischievous kids. So they would tease him, say things like, I remember once we were having breakfast and other monks were there, and this Swami who was practicing, who was under a vow of silence, the only weakness, the only problem there is when he replies with gestures, you have to look at him. If you don't look at him, then his reply will not work. So they would other monks would make a comment like, oh, he doesn't speak to us, but he has certain special people, his friends, to whom he speaks. And this monk is vigorously denying it like this, and the monks deliberately, they look away, and when they start eating again, to his fury. So this goes on. Now, what Shankaracharya says is, this is Giram Maunam to Balanam. This is the Mauna, this silence of the speech is for children. Children means children in spiritual life. It is, what it is like. It is like when a school teacher comes in, maybe with little kids in grade 4 or grade 5, and they're all shouting and screaming, and it's chaotic in the class, and the teacher comes in and then shouts, "Silence, keep quiet." So the kids fall silent for a while. It's exactly like that. There's chaos going on in the mind, and so we say, "Silence, keep quiet." And the way to do that is, it's very difficult to shut down the mind. So first you catch hold of it from outside. All the speech that we are talking about, it's first there in the mind, then it becomes expressed outside. It's difficult to stop it at the mind level. If you stop it at the level outside, slowly the mind will also become a little more controlled, little quieter. So that's a kind of crude kind of control. You impose it externally. That conserves energy. There's a lot of good to it, but it's also very preliminary. Shankaracharya says the real silence is Brahman. Yasmadvacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha yan maunam. That silence which words cannot express, mind cannot think of, that is Brahman. So that Brahman is the real silence. In fact, the real teaching of Vedanta is in silence. But if a person keeps silent, we won't understand. That's why the teacher has to speak. Or we will think that teacher doesn't know anything. That's why the teacher is keeping silent. So there is a saying that the first time I ask you a question, if you remain quiet, I'll think you are shy. Second time I ask you the question, if you still remain quiet, I'll think you are very profound. Third time, if you remain quiet, I'll realize that you don't know anything. So the teacher has to speak, but all of the speech, the Vedantic words which are used, the texts, they are only indirect indications. That which is Brahman cannot be expressed by words. So the words which are used can sweep away our misconceptions about Brahman, about my real nature. They can point me to my real nature, but then ultimately I have to grasp it myself. Words cannot take me there. No lecture can take me to enlightenment. Why not? So much of words are used. All these are texts after all. Aparoksha Anubhutis are texts full of words. Upanishads are texts full of words. So why can't words express Brahman? Everything we can express by words. So why not Brahman? And in fact, a lot of words are used. The reason is, so here we have to go into a little bit of Vedantic philosophy of language. What can words do? First, we look at that, and then we realize why words cannot express Brahman, why words cannot express my real nature. What can words do? Words can work when there is one of 5 factors. Any one of them, if they are there, words will work, language will work. What are they? Jati, guna, kriya, sambandha, rudhi. So jati means category or species or class. So somebody says, that is a cow. Now, cow is a species, and therefore you can, it belongs to a set. So this individual, this particular instance is a part of a larger set. It shares those characteristics. So I can use the name of that set. That creature called cow, here is one example of that. That's what I mean. But it will not work for Brahman. Brahman, there is no set of Brahman. There is no class of Brahman. It's one without a second. So there is no species or class or category which will in which you can put Brahman, in which you can put pure consciousness. Then guna, quality. Bring me the red flower. So when I say bring me the red flower, you look at the flowers and you will see, okay, so it means not the yellow one, not the white one. He wants the red one. How did that work? So red is a color. There's an object called flower, and its color is red. By that color, I was able to indicate what I want to say, and you can understand easily. So that's quality. Immediately you realize Brahman is qualityless, is without any beyond any attributes. So nirguna. Therefore, nirguna means attributeless or qualityless, and therefore Brahman cannot be indicated by any guna or quality. There is no specific quality by which you can point out Brahman. So guna will not work. The third factor which works in language is, where language can be applied, is kriya. Call the cook, or who cooked this beautiful dish. It's one tasty dish. Cook is a function, pachakaha, in Sanskrit word for cook. So cook is a function. Or call the driver of that vehicle, which is double parked outside. Now you know who is being called. The person whose function it is to drive, the person whose function it is to cook. So by that, we indicate something, by some activity, by some function. Now, Brahman has no activity. Brahman is the most laziest of all nishkriya, beyond any action. No action is possible in pure existence or pure being, nishkriya. Therefore, kriya cannot be used. Kriya means action. Action cannot be used to indicate, or use language to indicate Brahman. Well, there is one more way you can use language. Sambandha, teacher, student, parent, child. How does language work here? Teacher. This person is a teacher. That is possible only when there are students. In relation to a student, this person is a teacher. In relation to the teacher, this person is a student. In relation to this person, you are a parent. In relation to that person, you are a child. So these there are words. Language can work if something is related to something else. You can indicate something by its relationship. But again, Brahman cannot be indicated that way, because it is Advaita, non-dual. There is no second thing apart from Brahman. With what will Brahman have a relationship? Non-dual, no two. Relationship, in Sanskrit they say, Dvinishtha Sambandha. At least two things are necessary for a relationship. Two terms. Relationship will have two terms. When there is no two, Advaita, non-dual, where will Brahman have a relationship? So you cannot indicate Brahman by a relationship. Then there is only one more way. That is called rudhi. That means simply by, English you call it designation, or just give a name to it. Forget category or action or quality or relationship. Why not just call it something? Call it Brahman. Call it XYZ. Just like we call a person is John or Ram or Sita, not because of any category or action or quality or relationship. It's just a name that we give. So why don't we just give a name? This is called an ostensive definition. Just point out something and give a name. But this will also not work for Brahman, because for this to work, for naming to work, to give any name, you need to point out what you are naming. If I say call Ram, and you have to say who is Ram. So I can't find out. I can't point out Ram. Then how will the person call Ram? Because unless you point out that this person is called Ram, then you understand. If you just say Ram, so who is Ram? No, that I can't tell you. Then you will not understand anything at all by that term. So if I use a term like Brahman, so we use terms Brahman, Atman, Sat, Chit, Ananda. So isn't it giving a particular name? But no, it has not worked. Try to find out what is meant by it. When I say book, I mean this thing. When I say shirt, I mean this thing. When I say Sat, what do I mean? You don't know. So I can't point it out to you. Therefore, Rudhi, that naming, will not work. It is by convention you name something. A person is called Ram by convention. Just we all agree from now on this baby will be called Ram. But so why not all agree? But from now on this reality will be called Brahman. But what reality? Unless you can point it out, nobody will know what you're talking about. So none of these five will work. Jati, guna, kriya, sambandha, rudhi. Category or class, quality, action, relationship, or convention. None of them apply to Brahman. Now you understand also why they do not apply to Brahman. And yet it exists. You are that. Therefore, speech cannot refer to Brahman. But then this is a different topic. I've given a talk about it called the paradox of language. So you can look it up. I think it's there on YouTube. The different topic is that then how does Upanishads and all these books, how do they work? How are they teaching us about Brahman if language cannot express Brahman? How are they able to speak the unspeakable, say the unsayable? So there are strategies. Just for the sake of your interest, I might mention, what is the technique of saying something which cannot be said? Well, one way, there are multiple ways you can do it actually. One way is to say what it is not. So I cannot tell you what you are, your real nature, Atman. I can't tell you, but I can tell you what you are not. I'll say that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you're not the intellect. Beyond the body, mind, intellect, if you go, you'll find a blankness. You are not that blankness also. So this method of neti neti, not this, not this. So I'm nothing, not that also. So the Kena Upanishad says, Anya devatad vidita, rato avidita adhi. So it is what we are trying to tell you is other than everything that you know. Oh, it is unknown. It is other than the unknown also. Other than the unknown and other than the unknown. What is that? It cannot be said, but in this way it can be indicated. In another way, paradoxical language can be used. Farther than the farthest, nearer than the nearest. It moves and it does not move. That which is daytime to the worldly people is nighttime to the enlightened one. That which is day to the enlightened one is night to the worldly person. One who sees action in inaction and inaction in action, that one truly sees. Now it might sound very paradoxical, but each of them has a very specific meaning. And this paradoxical language points to a reality. If you get it, you will understand all these paradoxes immediately. One sadhu in Uttarakhand put it very nicely. He said, जब दो विपरीत बात एक साथ समझ में आएगी महात्मा जी, तब आपको अद्वैत पकड़ में आएगा. So when these contradictory things, you get it at once. What normally seems contradictory to others, you immediately understand what is being meant. Then you have understood Advaita. All right. Anyway, back to our subject. That thing which cannot be expressed by language, that ultimate silence, that is the silence of the Jnani. Not this silence where you don't speak for a few days or a few hours. The real silence is not the silence of the tongue. It is not even the silence of the mind. It's very interesting. Silence of the mind is silence of the yogi, of the Patanjali yogi. He silences the mind, quiet mind. Quiet tongue is good, but then quiet mind is better. That is the silence of the yogi. But Advaita Vedanta says the real silence is beyond the tongue, beyond the mind. It is that witness consciousness which cannot be expressed by language at all, which is utterly still, but always shining forth. Even when the mind is, when there are thoughts in the mind, even when you're speaking, that silence you are established in, that is real silence. That is the maunam, that is the silence of the enlightened one. Of this yogi here, he means the Jnana yogi. The Jnana yogi's silence is the silence of Brahman, not just silence of the speech or silence of the mind. While speaking also, he is actually silent. And the other one, even while not speaking, is not silent. Mind is still chattering. Subconscious mind is full of things to say. So only when it is released in sleep, then in sleep, it starts talking then. So chattering is going on at the level of the mind. Physical silence is actually not silence. Beyond the silence of the tongue, beyond the silence of the mind, is a real silence, which is existence itself, consciousness itself, the ultimate silence. So he says here, that reminds me of this Zen story, which is applicable here. The story is that 3 monks are sitting outside the monastery and talking. So one is the youngest monk, newcomer, novice. Another one is a little senior. Another one is more senior. So the youngest monk says, "Oh, look, the flag is moving, flag on top of the monastery, the flag is moving. The monk who was senior to him saw a teachable moment and said, no, it is the wind which is moving. But the senior most monk thought, I will teach both of them. And he said, no, it is the mind which is moving. So, you see, physically moving flag, but the cause of that, see, there is a philosophy behind it. You see, the grossest thing is something's happening in the world. A more subtle mind will see the cause behind it, like the wind. But even more subtle understanding is that all of this is because of we are experiencing in our mind. That's why the mind is moving. But the real punchline of the story comes, the most senior monk, who was an old monk resting in his room inside the monastery, he opens the window and looks down and he says, tongues are moving. That means too much talking is going on. He was resting. So, silence of the tongue, silence of the mind, but silence of consciousness. And that silence of Brahman or consciousness is perfectly compatible when the mind is thinking, tongue is speaking, yet you are completely in silence. The one who has not realized that, even when there is no speech, vow of silence, even when he is meditating, still the real silence is not there because it's still in ignorance. And then Shankaracharya, he says here, Brahman cannot be spoken about. After all, what will you speak? Verse number 108 and 9. What will you speak? Brahman cannot be spoken about. Vacho yasman nivartante tad vaktum kena shakyate. That which words cannot express. By what will you express that? You cannot speak about Brahman. Why not? We just discussed. Because jati, guna, kriya, sambandha, rudi, none of the 5 factors which are necessary for use of language are applicable to Brahman. Therefore, you cannot speak about Brahman. Why even try to speak about it? It will not work. Well, what about the world? This universe. I'm going to speak about the world. Prapancho. Then he says that prapancho yadi vaktavya sopi shabda vivarjita. Are you going to speak about the world? You cannot describe the world truly with language also. It's an interesting comment here. We normally think, yes, that's true. I suppose there is something very profound, Brahman, Atman, we cannot speak about it beyond language. Fine. But I don't use language for Brahman or Atman. Normally, I use language in the world. I talk to people and for worldly things, for my day-to-day life. He says, truly speaking, even this prapancha means the universe. You cannot truly describe this universe also by language. Why? Because the universe has a mysterious character. In Advaita Vedanta, this universe is an appearance due to Maya. Because of Maya, Brahman itself appears as this universe. So the status of this universe is, you cannot say it is real because only Brahman is real. And when you enlighten, you will see the universe is not real. Brahman alone is real. You cannot say it is unreal because it is appearing, you are experiencing it. That's the whole thing. We are experiencing this universe. Sad asadbhyam anirvachaniyam. Those who have studied Vedanta, they know. The nature, the characteristic of Maya is sad asadbhyam anirvachaniyam. That means it is impossible to speak of it or characterize it as existing. It is impossible to characterize it as non-existing. It has this mysterious paradoxical nature. Detailed, like the wonderful talk has been given by Swami Vivekananda. 3 talks on Maya he has given, and they are extraordinary. He shows one after another how our life is full of paradoxes. And you cannot really characterize this life as this is the reality, but you cannot dismiss it also as that this is completely unreal. No. So that is the nature of Maya. And all the products of Maya, this universe, it cannot be described properly by language. It is inexplicable. I was just reading, there's a book on the mathematician Kurt Gödel, who was here in Princeton University long time ago. He was a younger contemporary of Einstein. And they were both here at the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton. So there's this book by Rebecca Goldstein. She's a professor of philosophy, I think in Cambridge University. There she mentions something very interesting. She says, look at the state of science in the 20th century. The greatest discoveries, breakthroughs in science, in pure science, mathematics and physics in the 20th century. What are they? Einstein's theory of relativity, and then Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and Gödel's incompleteness theorems. Two theorems of incompleteness, but anyway, incompleteness theorem. Now, quite apart from, she says, quite apart from the actual theories themselves, look at the names. Relativity, relativity, then what is uncertainty and incompleteness. And then Rebecca Goldstein makes the remark that, 19th century, if you had asked scientists and mathematicians, how do you see science going, mathematics going in the future? They would have said, we will complete everything. We are almost on the verge of, having a perfect theory of physics, which will get an understanding at the most fundamental level of the universe. There was actually a program to complete mathematics. Mathematics would be a complete and there was one of the, I forget his name, very great Hilbert, I'm not very sure. He set out a program to complete mathematics, and which was shattered by Gödel's breakthrough. So the scientists in mathematics in 19th century would have said, we are on the road to completion, full understanding, perfect system of physics, mathematics. We'll get it in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But in 20th century, what happened? Relativity, uncertainty, incompleteness. So up to this, Rebecca Goldstein has said, but what struck me immediately was, these are the characteristics of Maya. Relativity, incompleteness, uncertainty, these are the characteristics of Maya, the very paradoxical nature of Maya. So here Shankaracharya says, you want to use language to speak about the world. Even the world you cannot describe accurately with language. Prapancho yadi vaktabhya soapi shabda vivarjita. Even the very nature of this universe you inhabit is approximate. All that science can do, modern understanding of science is, we can get good approximations. It's more now probability and approximation rather than a fixed, mechanistic, absolutistic, description of the universe. This is the maunam. This is the silence of the wise. And then he says, gira maunam. Gira means words, language, speaking. Silence of the tongue is for children, balana. This is the profound silence of non-dualism of Advaita. Whether you're speaking or not, as you're centered in the Atman, in the realization, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, you are in silence. Okay. I might have shared this earlier, but I think more than teaching Vedanta, I'm interested in telling jokes. But I tell you this, I have to tell. There was one Mauni Baba I met, a silent monk who was under the vow of silence in the Himalayas. So you'll be surprised to know that there was, like you have board meetings, there was a board meeting of monks in the Himalayas, in Gangotri. I attended one of those. Board meeting means like sadhus get together to discuss issues which are related to what is going on, in Gangotri, which are related to the monks, anything that has to be discussed. Now, it is a very amazing meeting. All kinds of monks, some are staying in huts, some are staying in caves, and they get together in one particular ashram every month. Every month it's a different place where the monks meet, and then there's a discussion of different issues. But it's very interesting, really. But the one thing I will share today is that one of the monks who was in charge of organizing this, he had modern ideas. So he said, we should have a resolutions book, take down minutes of the meeting. So he said, in meetings, you take down minutes. So somebody should take down the minutes. So they said that you, silent monk, the monk who was Mauni Baba, the monk who was silent, you will not speak. So you take notes. In Hindi, they said, tu to bolta nahi, to tu likh. Since you don't speak, you can write. So he decided to write. But what happened was, the chaos that happened was, when people were speaking, he was furiously writing it down. But if he couldn't keep up with the people who were speaking, the monks who were speaking, he would interrupt every now and then. He would clap his hands and then he would point. That means repeat what you are saying, repeat it every now and then, repeat. And the other monks became so wild. One of them shouted at him, you're under a vow of silence and you create such chaos. I wondered what would have happened if you actually spoke. In Hindi, he said, "Tu mauni ho ke ye karta to bolta to kya karta to." You're under the vow of silence and you're creating so much chaos. And I wonder if you actually spoke, what a mess you would create. So that is a vow of silence. Then 110. Desha. That is appropriate place, a place for meditation. Adau ante cha madhye cha jano yasmin vidyate yenedam satatam vyaptam sadesho vijanasmritaha. That solitude is known as space, wherein the universe does not exist in the beginning, end, or middle, but whereby it is pervaded at all times. What a beautiful point. So what is the appropriate place for meditation? The place is, the descriptions are given in yoga scriptures. Basically, the idea is to find solitude. If you are too much in the midst of people, there's crowds and there's noise and people come and speak to you, or even if they do not speak to you, just the awareness that there are people around, that can disturb the mind. So that's why we have things like monasteries and ashrams and even more solitary places. So you're advised to find a place which could be in the forest, or it could be in the mountain, in caves, mountaintops, all sorts of places which are just for solitude. You are left alone. I actually found a monk once. I went to meet the monk. He was living in a hole in the ground on the bank of Ganga. In fact, above Gangotri, more than 10,000 feet high in the Himalayas. I asked him, and this is so dark in the hole. I crawled in after him and I asked him, why there's a perfectly good cave nearby. Why don't you stay in the cave? And the monk said, there is a bear who stays in that cave, and that bear is apparently a bit of a bully, so he won't let go of the cave. That's why the monk stays in the hole. But whether it's a hole or a cave, or you find solitude. I've done that also. I mean, a log cabin where you are absolutely alone all day long. If you don't want, you need not see anybody else's face. If you want, you can go once for food, and that's it. And you are left alone, and there is this stunning beauty all around, towering mountains, glaciers running down. And it was in summer, so it was not terribly cold. If you just have some warm clothes, you'll be perfectly all right. And there's a cold mountain stream for your bath, and a tiny, rudimentary, but still adequate bathroom is there. So good enough. And you're left alone completely. What's the purpose of that? It is desha, a proper place for spiritual practice, which is, my main thing is solitude. Now, and there are, our senior monks would always caution us that yes, you can go into solitude and stay by yourself and meditate, but prepare your mind first. Prepared mind is necessary for doing spiritual practice in solitude. Otherwise, the mind plays tricks. Anyway, now here, from a non-dual perspective, what is solitude? What is the best possible place where there is nobody ever? There was nobody, there is nobody, nobody will ever come. No other being is there, no human being, no animals, no living being, no object. There is nothing, no object, no universe. So such a place is the most solitary thing. Even your body is not there, even the mind is not there. Oh, that's wonderful. What is that? That is pure consciousness itself, or pure being itself. That's the most solitary place. Best place for meditation. Where do you find it? He says, Yenedam sarvam tatam. He says, it is everywhere. Yenedam satatam vyaptam. That by which all of this is pervaded. Right here in the midst of Manhattan or Mumbai or Kolkata, in the midst of millions of people, is this ultimate solitude, the complete solitude. There's this wonderful poem written by, I'll see if I can remember. I'll share it with you. I've just remembered. I forget the name of the poet. I think Emily Dickinson. I'm not very sure. It's about solitude, and it says compares the different kinds of solitude. So it says the one kind of solitude where the sailor is alone. Imagine sailing in a little boat in the ocean, just the sky and the winds and the waves and nobody else for thousands of miles all around. That's one kind of solitude. And then she goes deeper and deeper. So the other kind, so she says finally one of the greatest kinds of solitude is that solitude, where you're solitary in the face of death. So somebody close or beloved has died and you sit, the body is there, nobody else, and the person is gone forever. And you're sitting near the body of the person has passed away. The solitude of death. And then at the end, she says, all of these are like noise, are like disturbance compared to that, she says, that polar silence of the soul turned into itself. Very beautifully put. When you turn into yourself, leaving out the world, leaving out the body, leaving out thoughts, memory, problems, all of that, no hearing, no seeing, no smelling, touching, no thinking, no remembering, no sleeping also. That inwardness, total inwardness, she says, polar silence, deepest silence, solitariness. So that solitariness, where will you get that solitude? Vedanta says, everywhere. That non-dual Brahman, which is right now, there is no second reality apart from that. You're completely alone. But this alone is alone with a capital A. It's not loneliness. People can be lonely in the midst of a crowd. The enlightened one is alone in the midst of a crowd. Whether there are thousands of people around in a great city, like this in Manhattan, or you're sitting in a cave or in that log cabin 10,000 feet high in the Himalayas, absolutely quiet. It is the same silence everywhere. It's the same solitude. This is the solitude with a capital S. This is the solitude, the aloneness with a capital A. It's always there because you are the only reality that exists. There's nobody else. A Christian mystic defined spirituality as the journey from the alone to the alone. Alone with a small a, alone, I, this little being, we are alone in the world. To the alone, capital A. You can call, I'm sure the mystic meant God, but in Advaita Vedanta, you are that. So you realize that you are alone, but there's no loneliness there. You are also everything. There is also a door into enlightenment, realizing the utter solitude in the midst of, he says, Yena idam satam tatam. He says, Yena idam satatam vyaptam. This entire busy universe. Here is the greatest solitude of all. That is Brahman. What is the best time for meditation? So in yogic practices, we are told that particular times are suitable. Yogis can feel it. At certain times, the mind becomes calm. So, for example, when the mind moves from the day moves from daytime to evening. That's why we have arati at that time, evening prayers from twilight. Mind becomes calm. Then midnight, the deepest part of the night, mind becomes calm. Early morning, it's called Brahma Muhurta, 4 a.m., mind becomes calm. It's still hushed. There's a beautiful description of Swami Vivekananda in New York when he was here in 1895 in a rented apartment. It says, often he would be in meditation, in deep meditation. When throughout the day he would teach, classes would go on. At night in that small room, in the rented apartment, when the heart of this great city, great and busy city, would fall silent in sleep, Vivekananda would sit in deep meditation in samadhi. So even at other times, sometimes people would come into the room to talk to him. There would be this very deep, almost a thick atmosphere of stillness in the room. And people couldn't speak, they would see him sitting quietly with eyes closed, and they would silently back out of the room. So that stillness. Now that in certain times it is more conducive to calming the mind down. Try it at 10 o'clock in the morning, won't work. I remember this young novice brahmachari in our main monastery in Belur Math. There we are supposed to meditate at 4 a.m. in the morning. This brahmachari somehow, he missed his 4 a.m. meditation, but he decided, why not be reasonable? 4 a.m. is too much. So why not be reasonable? I wake up at a decent hour and have breakfast, take a bath. And when everybody is going to work, at that time, I shall go and sit down in the temple and meditate. So at 10 o'clock, he goes and sits down in the temple and sits for meditation. And then suddenly he felt somebody poking him in the belly. And he looked. And it was the General Secretary of the order, Swami Atmasthanji Maharaj. He would go with this umbrella. So he's poking him with the umbrella. And he used very few words. Like this, he said, this is not the time for meditation. Go and work. So 10 o'clock is not the time for meditation. It's the time for work. Another Swami who became a very great composer of music, Chandikanandaji. So this is the story about his days as a novice, as a brahmachari in the ashram in Sargachi, where Swami Akhandanandaji, direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Gangadhar Maharaj, he was there. He was a Jivan Mukta, enlightened person. So this young brahmachari who later became Swami Chandikananda, he was meditating in the temple. At that time, there was no temple. There was just a prayer room, a shrine. So meditating in the shrine at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. And Swami Akhandananda was walking outside. He didn't even know this. He told somebody else, go to that shrine and tell that novice, that brahmachari, tell him not to pollute the shrine. Tell him to come outside and water the plants. He knows what is going on in the mind of that brahmachari who is meditating far away inside the shrine. So tell him, stop polluting the shrine with these thoughts. Come out and do some work. Swami Premananda says that he was going to, he was calling the brahmacharis in Belur Math. Swami Premananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, calling them, come to the kitchen. We have to, get vegetables ready and all of this for the night, for the meal. And Swami Brahmananda told the young monks, Swami Brahmananda was the president of the order at that time, tell him, we have come here for meditation and God realization, not to cut vegetables. So we will sit and meditate. And from downstairs, Swami Premananda heard this and he shouted back, all right, you all do your meditation. I alone can handle the entire cooking. But from here, if I hear the sound of the fish market in your minds, I will go upstairs and pull you down by the ears, pull you down here and make you work in the kitchen. You meditate, but you have to meditate. If you just sit there thinking all sorts of thoughts, which is the natural state for most of us, and Swami Premananda says, I can see what is going on in your minds. I'm going to catch you and pull you down by the ears and make you work in the kitchen. So, auspicious time. Just one more insight and then we'll stop. Here Shankaracharya says, the real meaning of the auspicious time, he gives a very beautiful verse. He says, Kalanat sarva bhutanam brahmadinam nimeshata kala shabdena nirdishto yakhandananda kodvayah. Beautiful verse. It means the non-dual Brahman, that is bliss, indivisible, is denoted by the word time, since it brings into existence in the twinkling of an eye all beings from Brahma downwards. What does this mean? So first we must know that time is that in which all beings are born, in which all beings exist, and in which all beings die and pass away. Nothing survives in time. Time is the great producer of all things and the destroyer of all things. Time. So Kala. Kala is that in which all beings arise and perish. All right. Now, Brahman or consciousness, in a twinkling of an eye, the entire universe it appears in Brahman. It exists or appears in Brahman, stays in Brahman, plays around in Brahman, and then vanishes back into Brahman. So all that, yeah, but how do we understand that? What does it mean? Consider the example of our dreams. When we enter into a dream, and we forget that we are dreaming, we are sleeping, we are in the bed, we forget all that, and suddenly we are there among friends, we are in some other place, maybe it is daytime, and we're talking to somebody we know, something is going on, people are around, there's a busy traffic, and all sorts of things are going on. Now, you might feel, you might feel, here is the world, here are people, each of them was born at some particular time, and they have their own personal histories, and this world itself, it was created millions and billions of years ago. Through evolution, life has evolved, and now we human beings have come. It's billions of years of history and all of that. But is it true? No. What is true is, the moment the dream started, the entire dream world and all the characters in the dream and the so-called personal histories, which you feel intuitively, something must be there. It is an already existing world. All of that was created in the twinkling of an eye by you, the dreamer. Created means projected. Is that true or not? It is true. I said, but that actually it is not a millions of years old world. It's just instantaneous for the dream. True, but in the dream, do you feel that? Do you feel that, oh, it's a new world, it was created just 1 minute ago? No, in the dream, you feel just like a waking world. You don't even remember that you are dreaming. It does not feel like this world is brand new and has been created 30 seconds ago by my mind. No, it feels like it is just like, of course, it has been there for billions of years, and all these people are there. They have their own lives. I have my own life, and I'm interacting with them. All of this actually was projected in a twinkling of an eye. So what it means here, there are different ways of teaching non-dualism. This is an advanced insight into non-dualism, Advaita. One way is the Upanishadic way. It's called Srishti Drishti Vada. Brahman has created the universe through Maya, and then this universe has been going on for millions and millions of years. First there was sky, and then air, and then fire, and then water, and then earth, and then Satya Yoga. The ages have passed. Satya Yoga, Treta Yoga, Dwapara Yoga, Kali Yoga, the 4 ages. Millions and billions of years have passed. So that is the way, the Hindu cosmology. But in modern science also, there was a big bang, and from that space and time have emerged, and matter has come, and energy has come. Then stars have formed, and then planets have formed, and on this particular planet, over millions of years, life has evolved, and now life has come to this form of human beings, and here I am one of those in this vast span of life, of time. I'm this tiny speck. I've been born. I'm this person. This is the worldview that we have got. Vedanta also uses this. Instead of Big Bang, of course, Vedanta will say Brahman, that is God, Brahman plus Maya has created this universe. All religions do that. That is called Srishti Drishti Vada. The world has been projected, and then we experience it. But here he is using a more advanced perspective, another way of looking at it. It has not been created for billions of years. It is appearing just now in consciousness, altogether. Holy Mother says this. I've forgotten the exact words. Somebody asked her, is it like one after another the universe has been created? And she said, not really. It is all together it appears. So in the story of Maya, you can talk about millions and billions of years. And yet the entire story, together with time and space, is appearing in an instant in Maya. And that's what he says. That is really time, Brahman itself, which in an instant, what is time? Time in which all beings are produced, in which they live and in which they die. That is really time, which is Brahman, which in an instant, the whole universe appears. He says, that time